It's 11:47 p.m. and your phone lights up again. You're already half asleep, but muscle memory has you stretching for it before you've even opened your eyes. Another message that can't wait, another favor, another little task that will keep you awake 30 minutes longer. You answer because that's what you do. For as long as you can remember, you've prided yourself on being the reliable one. First to reply, first to volunteer, last to leave. Somewhere along the way, you started to believe that speed and availability were the same thing as caring, that your value was measured in how little time passed between a request and your response. And for a while it felt heroic, almost noble, until the first tiny flicker of resentment appeared. You noticed it the night no one bothered to say thank you. You noticed it the afternoon your yes was treated like a foregone conclusion. You noticed it the morning you checked your sent messages and realized you were always the one to initiate, to smooth things over, to fill the silence. The more you gave, the less anyone seemed to notice you were giving anything at all. Why does it work like that? Why does constant accessibility turn invisible? Psychology has a name for the reflex that keeps you answering every ping: people-pleasing. Maybe you learned it growing up, when love felt conditional and praise arrived only when you were helpful. Maybe you learned it in classrooms where the quiet kids were overlooked and the eager volunteers got gold stars. Whatever the origin, the lesson was clear. Be useful, be agreeable, stay on call, and you will earn belonging. Over time, that reflex fuses with fear. The fear of rejection, the fear of seeming difficult, the fear of being labeled selfish. And it begins to feel less like a choice and more like an obligation. In trauma psychology, there's even a word for this over-accommodating reflex: the fawn response. Fight, flight, and freeze get the headlines, but fawn is the urge to soothe danger by appeasing it, to stay safe by melting into whatever someone else needs. It looks polite on the outside, but on the inside, it's powered by anxiety, and it is exhausting. There's another principle quietly at work called psychological entitlement, the tendency to expect tomorrow what we enjoyed yesterday. Give someone unlimited access, and it rewires their sense of normal. Social scientists sometimes call it the law of accessibility. The more present something is, the less consciously we register it. Oxygen is everywhere, and so we forget the miracle of every breath until it's gone. Your perpetual yes becomes as unnoticed as the air in the room, and the moment you stop, people gasp, startled. Not because you wronged them, but because you interrupted a pattern that made their lives easier. And that is the moment the guilt rolls in. Saying no feels like sabotage. Ignoring a midnight text feels callous. Your inner voice whispers that you're abandoning people, letting them down, committing the cardinal sin of being inconvenient. This is the nice person trap at full volume. Society loves agreeable caretakers, right up until those caretakers need care themselves. Boundary guilt is the ache you feel when the old reflex meets the new decision. And although it feels like a moral alarm bell, it's actually a sign you're healing. Guilt shows up anytime you rewrite a rule that once kept you feeling safe. So you decide to experiment. You stop texting first. You wait an hour, just an hour, before replying. You let an invitation pass without a lengthy explanation. Your no is kind, concise, and complete. And the world does not end. Something far more interesting happens instead. A few people fall silent, not out of malice, but because the conversation was powered solely by your energy. Others bristle, pressing back with passive-aggressive reminders of how helpful you used to be. That reaction is data, not drama. It identifies the relationships that thrived on your self-abandonment. And then there are the surprises, the friends who hadn't realized how lopsided things had become, who immediately adjust, who start asking, "How are you holding up? What do you need?" You feel your shoulders drop a little. You sleep through the night. Your own thoughts get louder than the incoming notifications, and from that quiet, a forgotten voice returns. Your own. Healthy boundaries are often misunderstood as walls, but they are closer to filters, clarifying what you are willing to absorb and what you will let pass. A time boundary might sound like, "I'm offline after 8." A verbal boundary might be, "I'm not comfortable discussing that." An emotional boundary can simply be holding space for someone's feelings without signing the contract to fix them. Boundaries do not push people away. They invite the right ones closer because they signal clarity and self-respect, and healthy people can recognize both. Of course, reactions will vary. Some will admire your newfound steadiness and quietly follow suit in their own lives. Some will test the gates, knocking harder than before, accusing you of changing. They are right. You have. Relationships are ecosystems, and every change in one organism ripples through the habitat. But ecosystems adapt. Those rooted in mutual respect will find a new balance. Those rooted in convenience may wither. It is not your job to rescue what was sustained by your silence. What's left after the pruning is a life that fits inside your own skin. Mornings arrive without that familiar dread. You check your phone and see conversations, not obligations. You notice the quality of your yes transforming because it is chosen, not coerced. Paradoxically, your presence becomes more valuable precisely because it is no longer guaranteed. Friends lean in when you speak. Colleagues pause before interrupting. You have oxygenated your own existence, and suddenly people can feel the difference. Over time, something else shifts. Opportunities that once felt out of reach begin to appear. Projects that align with your interests, invitations from people who respect your time, moments of creativity replenished by genuine rest. When you stopped making yourself endlessly available, you created scarcity, but you also created worth. You taught the world what you will and will not trade for belonging. That lesson echoes outward and inward at the same time, reinforcing itself with every boundary honored. And here is the deeper transformation. You stop abandoning yourself. You reclaim the hours you once surrendered to reassure others. You hear your own preferences clearly. You recognize that saying no to what drains you is saying yes to the person you are becoming. The external world may or may not applaud this change, but that was never the point. The applause you needed was your own. Pause for a breath and imagine it. An inbox that waits until morning, a schedule with white space wide enough for a walk. Relationships in which presence is a gift, not a given. Imagine the energy that floods back when you are no longer running leak-stopping errands in everyone else's emotional plumbing. Who might you be with that power restored? What ideas could grow in the silence you once filled with automatic yeses? What relationships would flourish when tended by a version of you who is rested, honest, and no longer resentful? When you stop being constantly available, everything changes. Not because the world becomes kinder or people magically evolve, but because you do. You choose yourself, and that single choice rearranges every dynamic around you. It teaches others how to treat you, and it teaches you how to treat yourself. The shift is quiet but profound. Appreciation replaces expectation, consent replaces compliance, intentionality replaces impulse. You breathe easier. You live louder, even when you speak less. So here's the question that hangs in the air as the screen fades and the room grows still. Who would you become if you stopped overgiving? Not who might approve, not who might leave, but who might emerge from beneath the weight of a million reflexive yeses. The answer is waiting in the space you clear when you dare to say, with warmth and conviction, "I'm not available right now,